clicking on the video. In this track, we talked about improv, and we're joined by John Opdycke, who is the co-founder and president of Open Primaries. We talked about questions like what makes someone good at improv, and why are improv skills relevant to movement leading. And I have never laughed more in an episode, so I know you all are going to enjoy it. Now, without further ado, here is the track. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Trek. The Trek is a Civics Unplugged series where community members participate in meaningful discussions on topics that are too often neglected when thinking about building the future. Through prompting questions and provocations, we venture together into complex but important conversations related to building the future and democracy. We understand that this work requires ongoing dialogue, but it's a journey worth trekking through. My name is Madison. I'm a high school senior from Verdigris, Oklahoma, joined by some of our community members and a special guest, which you will hear from in just a moment. And today we are talking about improv. So once you see your name on the screen, give a brief introduction and the 1 to 3 words you associate with the topic and why.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm 23 years old. My words, I mentioned this in the Slack channel, but I think of theater arts because my theater arts class, it was like high school, sophomore year, thought I would do an acting thing, never did anything like that. And the first day we had improv and it was traumatizing. It was like the scariest thing ever. And never took an acting class or anything like that after that, but yeah. So theater arts, yeah.
D-Money. Dariel.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. I was my mom distracted me for a moment. 3-word associations I would associate with improv is going with the flow. I know that's cheating. And winging it. I know that's also cheating, but I don't live by the rules, which is also improv. I'm breaking rules all the time.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a sophomore in high school, and the 2 words that popped in my head were flexibility and optimism.
Hi, I'm John Opdycke, special guest John Opdycke. I'm the president of Open Primaries, and the words that come to mind for improv are emergence, listening, and not knowing.
Also breaking the rules. 4 words. Just kidding.
Why do you think John brought me on?
Madison, it's with an E. E-M-E-R. So my words with 1 M. My words are
spelling.
Essential to political strategy, I would say. And I'm cheating as well because other people are.
Wow, so many rule breakers here. I would say confidence, not just in the theater sense, but literally anytime you have to improvise, you have to have confidence or else it comes off as, I don't know, it just doesn't come off the same. But yeah, thank you all for sharing your words. Now we get into the actual discussion. So does anyone have a question or provocation to get us started off with?
Do you associate improv more with or performing arts, or do you associate it with your basic life? I know that's a pretty general question. Not sure if anybody else wants to provide a better question.
I think that's a great question.
Madison, what is this C?
That's what she associates with because she's breaking the rules too.
Okay.
It's not loaded on your end.
Okay, got it.
I would answer that as like first thought. Obviously, I associate it with the arts, but like I think there's so many things in our everyday life that we don't realize is improv. But I think it's most prevalent in everyday life.
I mean, I think that unfortunately, improv has been relegated to the theater arts. when in fact, and this is changing somewhat, there's a growing kind of industry environment engagement that improvisational approaches and skills are enormously helpful to business leaders, to students, to activists, to people, looking to build and create new things in the world. And so in some ways, I think it's been more ghettoized as a formal theater art, but I think that's beginning to change, and I think that's very important and very positive.
Yeah, I would say that at first my mind kind of goes to theater, but it also goes to debate. I did debate all throughout high school, and I remember having to improvise so much and just like having to think on my feet, which were really good skills. And when you kind of boil it down, a lot of the benefit of being able to improvise is being super adaptable, which is why I think that it's super useful to many fields, as John mentioned. And it would kind of make me want to pose a question, like, how do you, kind of twofold, like, what makes someone good at improv, and how do you become good at improvising?
Well, maybe I could take a stab at that. I've been actually performing and directing improv for about 15 years at the Castillo Theater in New York City and the Magnet Theater in New York City. And I think the thing about improv that's most understood is mostly people think you have to be a really good talker. You have to be witty, quick-witted, know how to talk quick and like make stuff up on the fly. And that's actually not true at all. Improv is about, I think there's basically two skills, and both of them are incredibly learnable. You can learn them very, very quickly. The first is listening. Improv is all about listening. And I don't just mean like opening your ears, but intently listening to what other people are saying, what they're doing, what they're not saying, really listening to other people. And then saying yes and to what they say. And you could say, oh, that's just the yes and. Yes, everyone knows that. It's a little trick. But saying yes and is an incredibly powerful tool, because you are basically listening to the other person and then you're building with what they're saying. You're not negating what they're saying. You're not ignoring what they're saying. You're building with it. And my experience is that if you listen really, really well and hard, the words, you don't have to worry about the words. You don't have to worry about being quick and witty and smart and funny and all that. That's a misunderstanding of what makes a good improviser.
And kind of going off of that, like, you have to be, in my opinion, like you can't be too worried about failing, because every once in a while, like, you're tried doing improv, like more in the theater sense, and either a joke, like, it just won't hit the audience the right way, or like it doesn't, what you're thinking of doesn't work out. If you are too afraid of the consequences, then you like just won't improv at all, and then it kind of like, it just fails without even trying.
To John's point of yes and, like, in my semester in that class, like observing people who were good at improv, I just, like, to that point, it's like kind of validating the other person's point, whether that's in a debate and saying yes and, even if you don't agree with it, but building off of what's going on around you is really important, and like being able to put yourself in different shoes of whether that's who you're debating or whatever, to come up and build off of good points.
Yeah, it also sounds like, John, it kind of sounds like you're giving advice for good conversation as well. I can't help but notice, like, when you talk about like intently listening and saying yes and, like, when you said like, oh, if you're really listening, then what you're going to say will just like come naturally, which I think is super applicable. And also like tying in what Julia said about like yes and kind of like validating what other people are saying and acknowledging it and building off of it. So I think it's really cool to just like be able to pull that and instantly apply it to something like conversation. Just shows just how beneficial it is to use, I guess, kind of techniques from improv in different areas of life outside of the arts.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's very unfortunate, and I don't mean this to be a, you know, an abstract criticism, but the way that we're all taught to talk is that you just kind of wait around while the other person is talking, thinking about what you're going to say, wait for them to shut up, and then you say what you want to say. And then and you're not really listening to the other person. You're just kind of waiting your turn. And that's how we talk a lot to each other, you know, in our day-to-day lives. And it's not very intimate, and it's not very creative, but it is the norm. It's kind of how we're all taught to talk to each other. You guys want to do some improv? I have a simple little game that you guys will love.
Yes.
Julia's down.
All right. It's called One Word Story. So the way it's going to work, we're going to do a good version, and then we're going to do a bad version. And it'll kind of show some interesting things about the difference. All right.
I suppose it'll both be bad.
Well, no, trust me. One will be bad and one will be great. All right. So the order of this is Madison, me, Gary, Sam, Julia, Dariel. Is that the order you guys all see on your screens? Okay. So we're going to tell a one-word story. And the first time we tell this one-word story, each of us is going to think of, you know, we want to say something great, funny, really, you know, wonderful, like be thinking all about you being the star. Okay. And that's what's most important. All right. You want your word to be the shining star of the one-word story. Okay. So, Sam, give us a title for our one-word story.
The singing snowman. There you go.
Singing
Sorry.
snowman. Okay, so we're just going to take everyone come off mute. We're just going to say one word at a time, and we're going to tell the story of the singing snowman. But again, make it all about yourself. Be the star. You know, be what you have to say is the most important thing.
So, wait, I'm first, right?
Yep.
It can be like any word.
Just one word to start. Like, think of a story. Once upon a time. That's how a story usually starts. So just say one word, and we're gonna tell a story.
Okay.
He just said your first word.
Okay.
Last.
Okay, last. That'll be my word.
Okay. Okay. Last. Unbelievable.
I think it's Julia.
Horrific.
I'm after Sam. It's you next, Dariel.
I was after Sam. Okay. So, Gary, what did you say?
Horrific.
Night.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Can we have Madison writing these words down on the Notion so we know where we're at?
Can we start over? This was like a mess.
Okay, we'll start over.
And
No, everyone,
write the order, please.
and just keep yourself off mute, and just all right. Let me go through the order again though, because I think we're not. So I'm just going on what's on the screen. Maybe that's why it's hard. Our screens are different. I have Madison.
Why don't we do this?
Okay. So Julia, Dariel, Sam, John, Gary, Madison. One word at a time.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
D.
Dariel.
The magnificent.
Creature.
No, I got it. Madison.
Okay.
John. Wait, what do you delete?
Our screens are not in sync, and I started typing. I didn't know, but you got it. Okay.
Magnificent creature. John, you're next.
Leapt.
Under.
The.
Oh, you're skipping me, Julia.
Oh, sorry. I don't see your name on the screen. Okay, go.
Water.
2.
Dariel.
The.
Bottom.
Unnecessarily.
Stopped.
Rapidly.
Before.
For. Dariel.
Yeah, Dario, don't turn off your mic.
Oh. Wait, I thought Gary was the last one to talk. I thought it was Madison and then Julia.
The list is on the screen, Dariel.
Hold on, I'm thinking. They.
Crashed.
What? Past?
Crashed. With the C. Yeah.
Among.
Lightning.
Oh man, he didn't say Among Us.
Veterans.
All right. Did we illustrate the point?
Okay, great. So that was terrible, right?
Yeah.
See,
Really?
in some ways, when you focus on being the star and saying something that's, interesting and whatever, you can't build a story. Now we're going to do it one more time. But this time, I want everyone to listen to the story. And a lot of times, the word that makes most sense is the, or something very simple. You're just moving the story along. Once upon a time, there was a snowman who, and you have to listen to the person before you. And Dariel, don't put yourself on mute. You're in some ways, what you're doing is not listening to the person before you, so you're not able to respond right then and tell the story. You want to be, it almost sounds like we want it to sound like one person is telling the story, not 6 people throwing words on a computer.
All right. Pay attention, Dariel.
Word.
So just listen to the person before you and just add to what they're saying.
Okay. The reason why I kept myself muted is because there's going to be a lot of echo because my microphone and speaker are next to each other.
All right. Let's go, Julia.
Once.
Upon.
A.
Time.
There.
Was.
A. Civic.
Snowman.
Snowman. Wait. Did we
Oh, I'm
skip
sorry. I jumped in.
I'll do snowman.
Who?
Had.
A.
Bad.
Declaration.
That declaration.
About.
Every.
Gary.
Other.
What? Snowman.
But.
He.
Loved.
To.
Yeah.
Write
White papers.
About.
Enlightenment.
wait, what?
Enlightenment.
This says a lot about what's on our minds constantly. White papers.
Sam.
Duh.
Duh.
Moral.
Wait, duh.
The.
Okay.
Moral.
Moral of
The
Story.
Is.
Two.
Ever.
is it ever? Moralize.
Boom. End of story. Mic drop.
Okay.
That was
Oh,
good.
I was wishing Madison would either say civics or notion, so we can be
No,
like
I was
never
gonna
moralize
say
notion.
I was gonna say democracy. Never moralize democracy.
The people on YouTube are gonna watch this and they're gonna be like, "What are they doing?"
Are they okay?
There's something entertaining about this, though.
They're gonna start emailing info@civicsunplugged.org and be like, "What is this?"
Hold on. Now that we've done bad, better we have to do best.
Oh God, no.
It's okay.
That was awesome. Did you guys experience the difference between the two?
Yeah.
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 Kind of miss the lightning veterans though.
All right. Okay. Next one.
Now to the real trick. Is that what we're saying?
The question. Why is improv useful for movement leaders? Or the skills related to it?
Well, you're gonna have so many unpredicted situations come your way, and even just like predicaments that you're in. So you have to be able to build off of the current events that you're facing, and even though they might not be what you expected, to build something great.
Hold up. So I promise I'm not bringing up this example just because John is here, but open primaries is pretty much the only campaign experience I have. So in Florida, we had to improvise a lot, especially when there was this one situation where Elena and I were trying to get a hold of a text banking system from this one organization called Represent Us. We were under the assumption that we would get it and we were on a good track until we didn't. So Elena and I had to improvise and make a Google sheet full of voter phone numbers, and we had to manually go through and text each and one of them through Google Voice. So knowing how to improvise when things don't go your way is important, or else the things that you want to do is not going to happen. And I live by that every day. Another example could be Gary. He was showing me this course for live streaming, and I found a better solution improvising on how to save money and resources and time and money because I already knew how to use this free program. And I'm like, I don't need this training course for this paid program when you can just get it for free. So improvising can help you in a lot of different aspects.
I think people that know how to improv are really empathetic and can work with all sorts of people. And it's hard to create humor with people that you don't respect and love in some kind of capacity. And I think there's so much parallel between that and like collective action, where you're going to be working with people, different ages, backgrounds, etc.
Well, let me ask a provocative question, Gary. Do you think there are people who don't know how to improv?
In movement, in like civic space?
In the world?
I would say that most schooling probably strips that natural ability away from people.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's a stereotype of like the the office worker that can only really be told exactly what to do. And I think you like learn how to be that person like over time.
Uh-huh.
In environments that are very like that don't cultivate your agency. And I think there's people that have grown up in households, go to schools, work in careers where like you become really risk averse, because you fear punishment, right? And so yeah, I would say probably most people are not anywhere close to their improv potential.
Yeah, I would kind of like push back on that a little bit and say that I don't know if it's necessarily because of the schooling system. Like I'm not sure if like people are like have inherent abilities to be like to improv and like be adaptable and flexible. I think of like my family has so many little kids, and they are they are by no means like very adaptable to like changes in like their like for anything that they want. So I feel like it's something that you definitely have to learn over time, which maybe the schooling system doesn't optimize for, but I don't know if it's necessarily because of that. Yeah.
Well, I think my point is that there's an inherent capacity that can be cultivated, and it can also be attenuated.
Right.
So there's no I don't really see where the pushback is there on that, right? It's basically what I'm saying is the environments heavily shape your ability to be like agile mentally, etc.
I want to add on to what Gary said. I'm known for not being a big fan of how school operates. I agree with Gary because most of the time we are taught one way to do something because that's the only way we need to understand how to succeed on exams. But in real life, it won't work every single time the same way. So it's important for instances like schooling to teach a variety of different ways to do something so that in case one way doesn't work, you can improvise or improv another way to do something. It doesn't teach critical thinking skills. It just teaches you how to do a set process over and over again.
Yeah, I think like Madison and Gary both made good points. Madison, I don't know if I heard you wrong, but you made the point of like kids not being able to improvise and that's learned over time more so. I think you said that, which is like a good point. Like you have to roll with the punches at any age, but yeah, kids are looking to somewhere for answers, and like the school system kind of does that for people. Like Gary was saying, like it gives them a path of like what they're supposed to be doing at each time. And I think a lot of people, and I went through this too, like once you graduate college, it's like, so you were told what to do. It was very structured all throughout high school and college. There wasn't much improv. And then like once you are an adult and you have full control over what you can do next, like it's very intimidating. And you're like, what am I supposed to do now? Like I just have like all these years in front of me, like, and I have full control over them. And that's improv at that time is a really intimidating thing for people.
And this is kind of branching off, but we were talking about how like schools can sort of hurt people's ability to improv. And I think, at least in my experience, that sports and athletics can help a lot because because like even if a coach gives you like, okay, run this play, if it doesn't work out perfectly, you have to be able to adapt. And for a lot of people, once they get to that level or their comfort level, that ability to adapt becomes more natural, where you can actually work as a cohesive team to just go with the flow and like make the basket, get in the goal, whatever. Like, so I think sports can help a lot.
I like the concept of improv, and I actually didn't think about it as much until John was explaining his background with it, with like improv crews. I wasn't thinking about it so much as like a collective activity as much as like a individual person just being able to be like adaptive and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like realize that like the an ideal is like that your team is like all like collectively good at adapting to situations and like to the world, to challenges that come ahead, and I think it's a pretty big unsolved problem opportunity for hundreds of people, thousands of people to be like this sort of adaptive yet cohesive, in sync unit.
Yeah, and to Sam's point about sports too, like I was thinking about the other day. I'd never really reflected much on like my high school sports experience, but I kind of was the other day. I was like, there is like nothing like that, having again like structure in a way, but also just like a group of people who are training together like every day and like being rolling with those punches so much throughout sports. And there's like nothing like that. And yeah, a lot of improv skills come from that.
I think it's fascinating that you brought up team sports, because it and Gary, your point about it being an individual or a collective skill, because I really think that improv, properly understood, is all about relational activity, whether that's 2 people or 20,000 people. It's a method. It's like a methodology and approach to kind of team development, team emergence, team growth. And it all starts with listening. Because, the thing you said, Gary, I really agree with you. Like, we have this natural ability to improv, but it gets beaten out of people. It gets like, don't improv, be a drone. We'll just tell you what to do. And your question, like, why, what is this about for people who are movement leaders, who are change agents, who are, movement builders? And I think that there's a lot of pressure on movement leaders to be the ones talking and the ones with the answers. And I think that one way that improv can be helpful to, or an improv outlook can be helpful to movement leaders, is understanding that you can create environments in which the total team can grow by being a good listener. That doesn't mean you're silent, but being a listener that is creating with everything that people are giving helps the whole team grow and develop.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like, you watch a good improv show, there's not one person that just dominating like the number of words said, right? And it's like this, it's everyone together bringing out making their contributions. But yeah, that the troop leader needs to set the culture where everyone feels comfortable contributing. And the leader needs to identify those gifts, right, by really paying attention to the individual members.
Think about it too, like, think about the experience you have, all of you, of being in a group, whether it's a sports team or a therapy group or a study group or whatever, any kind of group you're in, and having the experience of saying something, and the group, not just in its words, but in its actions, says something like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's take that and do this with that and do that. Like, think about how that experience is. The experience is like, to bring it back to team sports, it's like making a great pass to someone who makes a layup. Like that, it's a satisfaction of like, wow, I just made a real contribution to the team having, made a step forward. And then think of that experience of saying something, and it's not like people say, oh, you're stupid, don't say that. They just don't listen to you. They just move on, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, oh well. And I guess I'm saying that not because, like, I think the experience of being heard is growthful. I think it like opens up new possibilities. Like when you're heard, then you think of something else to contribute to the group. You grow. When you're shut down, you just kind of, you don't have much more to contribute. You know, it's harder to contribute.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
mean, John,
and
go ahead.
I was just going to think, and then like think about that, like amplify that to a national political campaign, you know, of like, and I really think if you look at Obama, if you look at Barack Obama, one of the things that he and his team did so well was not just, I'm Barack Obama and I have all the answers and follow me. It was, I'm Barack Obama, I'm an inspirational leader, and my job is to create a zone that involves tens of millions of Americans that are all growing and going through a kind of a growth process together. And that involves me listening and incorporating what you're saying into this campaign. So I think he did that brilliantly.
So do you think he actually did that, or did he make it seem like he was doing that? And I'm not trying to ask a leading question. I'm just wondering what.
Oh, I think he did it. Okay. I don't think it translated into how he governed the country, but I think it was. I don't think you can dismiss the significance of his campaign by criticisms of decisions he made once he was elected. I don't think one negates the other. I have criticisms of how he governed, but I think how he ran that campaign was a very growthful experience for the country. So I think people went through something together.
Well, I guess I wonder if it doesn't translate to like you know, systems change. Like, yes, people could grow individually, but I guess I wonder like how much of that, like a lot of the good feelings were predicated on this belief of what he could do as while governing. And I guess I wonder like if people feel heard, but whatever they said is not being translated while someone is in office, like it, I mean, that has to be really noted, right?
Yep. Well, personally, I know I'm kind of speaking a lot here, but I think that's one reason why democracy reform is such a big issue now, when it wasn't 10 years ago. It's because people had that experience of being heard, but they also had the experience that government is not set up to hear.
Yes, 100%. And I was, but my next question was, what technologies were in place that allowed for that input data to be like actually recorded and eventually processed and translated into people policy, right? I think it's I think our aspirations for what a campaign could be are just really limited. As in, like, we should have greater imaginations for this. I think too often our campaigns are about getting out the vote, whereas like, what if campaigns were so much more about like actually getting a sense of what people's civic aspirations were,
yeah,
right? And then like using that to genuinely shape how someone governs.
That's a great point.
Like, you know, you're you know, when it comes to a politician that sounded like, I'm not saying that he didn't care, but like when it comes to someone that sounded like he really cared, you almost couldn't get better than Obama, right? Like, he just so smooth, and like you really felt like you were listened to. And I don't think what I think that is really important, that the politician is able to have that sort of charisma and empathy. But if it's not going, a campaign is not going to be revolutionary on top of that. If there's not like almost like democratically spirited systems that are allowing for like all the conversations that are happening around the country, again, to be translated into collective civic aspirations. So I think there's a lot of like what I'm not trying to say is that we throw out good rhetoric and like ability to connect, right, like through the camera or in a town hall. But I think like we can, I guess where my head's at is like, how can we use technology to make it such that people can almost like I guess the ideal is that you're able like to get an accounting for when you contributed your individual input, right, that you could see how that shaped that your representatives' decisions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally agree with you there. Like, you really shouldn't have one without the other. Like, you need someone who is able to connect with people through powerful rhetoric and charisma, but also those democratic processes. But I think that, what's leading this transition is that people are just so tired of hearing empty promises, and people who are good at getting people fired up and translating that into action. I mean, I could say literally any politician's name and you would nod your head and be like, yeah, like it's everywhere. And so, yeah, I think that's such a good call out, and hopefully we'll see that transition soon with at least some candidates.
Do we think it's time to shift to
the reflection?
Yeah. We can go ahead and do reflection. I'm gonna copy and paste the notes in the chat so that you all can look over them, and I can start off with reflection. I really like what John was saying earlier. So taking the principle of like yes and like validating people, like that's something that I've learned about myself a lot recently in the past year, is that like once like I feel like my contributions are valued, like I just like it like puts me on a roll, and it like I feed off of that so much. And it's so powerful to see what that unlocks in myself and other people. And I think that just like part of the reason why people really enjoy the trek is because something as small as like writing down what people are saying or like nodding their heads or whatever, it's like a form of like validation. It's like your contribution to this conversation matters. Like we write down everything. And I think that translates to so many other processes that we have in CU. I mean, in our Slack, you can do this thing where you like give a taco to someone, and it's basically like a form of like appreciation. And I know Gary leads the way for that. Like anytime someone does anything, he's like, at Sam, all my tacos for the day, like amazing job or whatever. And so it's just like that culture of appreciation that really breathes not only like productivity, but like genuinely good results.
I think an important attribute as a leader is both doing what Gary does, and I think that form of letting people know that what they're contributing is heard and is appreciated and is important, and that's critical. I think there's another component to that as well, which is taking what someone is giving and transforming it in a way that builds with it, not negates it, not transforms it in a way that disfigures it or distorts it, but transforms it nonetheless. Doesn't just put it on a pedestal and say, wow, that's fantastic. Uses it to build something improvisationally that can then be used by others to build improvisationally and keep going. And I actually think that's a wonderful feature of language that we can build using language if we pay attention to that.
I mean, yeah, because otherwise it just looks like virtue signaling. And if you're like, I appreciate
Yes.
you so much, you know, like, I mean, I know that's what Gary has talked about as well. It's like, Gary's really good about that. Like, he asks so many people for comments on docs, and then he like actually integrates all of the feedback. And it's not just like, oh, thank you, actually listening. That's so important as well. It's a good call out.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard work. It's hard work because sometimes people give stuff that's not that easy to work with. You know, and also I don't think that appreciating something means that you can't disagree with it or have say, hey, let me add something to what you're thinking that could transform what you're thinking, but that doesn't negate it. It builds with it. But it doesn't have to be a kind of like just stock. I totally agree with what you're saying, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to leave it there. That kind of that's like I find that a toxic mode of communicating. It leaves everybody on their little island where everybody is, basically said everything you do is great and perfect, and we're never going to offend each other, and we're never going to touch each other. We're just gonna. I find that very disturbing, actually, that form of communicating and talking with other people.
Something I took away from this, and something that may relate to something Madison said, is what Gary's doing right now. My video is off because another application is using it, and I can't have them on in two applications. I lost my track of thought. Okay, so one lesson I took away kind of derives from Madison, understanding other points of view and implementing them, because maybe, as I said before, one way may not be the right way. And if you don't know any other way, it's next best thing is to take other ways from other people. I know that seems confusing, but it'll probably make sense if you rewatch it like 3 times.
Something I took away was how like crucial empathy and humility are in improv. I had never really thought about it as like, I guess I didn't put so much emphasis on listening like we did in this call. And I love that because it's not just about like, what idea do you think is best? It's which one is best for the team, which works best with the story if we're talking about a theater sense, or what works best for the community, and trying to really like grow, and you have to listen to start with that.
Yeah, I would echo that point also, like just this conversation in general, like if John, if you're the one who brought it up, like I appreciate that because it really changed my perspective on improv. Like I said, I always just had a like funny stereotype with improv just because of personal experience and kind of wrote it off a little bit. But just how we use it in our everyday lives and how it is so tapped into listening is so important. And I will proudly use the word improv now.
Yeah, one of the things that this conversation made me think of was how I think everyone's mission, a part of it should be to find their improv partners in life. I mean, especially in this age where like kind of everything is like feels kind of up for grabs and in flux. The world is just changing faster and faster than ever. If you're with a bunch of people that like aren't able to have fun, aren't interested in like listening and paying attention to what's going on, don't like diversity, spontaneity, aren't creative or interested in being creative or imaginative aren't able to kind of laugh at themselves, it's not easy to work with them, you know. And when it comes to like movement building, right, it doesn't happen overnight. If anyone knows that, it's John. And so you got to really love the people that you work with. So I guess I have I have a renewed appreciation, or a deeper appreciation for almost everyone, right, that I'm able to work with through Civics Unplugged, because it's very energizing almost always, which is cool. Almost everyone.
He said, except me.
Dariel.
We love you, Dariel. I just want to add, I just can't say enough about the amount of creative energy that Civics Unplugged is putting into these kind of, you know, not flashy but important conversations, because I think that you know, there is a huge emphasis on immediate results, you know, putting wins on the board, making change today. And I think these are really important conversations. I just do. And I really like that you guys invest in this kind of community building and dialogue.
What is it that like one of our co-founders likes to use the phrase, we move at the speed of trust. And I just, you know, if you rush things, and it's not inclusive and not fun, it's a great way to lose trust, right? And we need a lot more of that in our democracy, but also in the democracy reform, democracy building space. So
Now I have a newfound appreciation for that when Josh says it all the time. But so John, since this was your first trek, we have to know, what did you think about the trek overall? I know you said a little bit more, but if you want to add, go ahead.
I loved it. It was great. You guys are extremely serious people, and I feel energized by that, and it's great. You guys are terrific. I'll come to any trek you want. And even if you want me to, you know, if you ever need someone to be like a grouchy old man, you know, for one of your treks, hey, call on me, because I can be a grouchy old man too. So.
Well, I will say that is the most that I've ever laughed during a trek, and I really, really appreciated when you improvised and asked us to do the one-word story. Never done anything like that in a trek before, so it was obviously great to have you, and I know we all enjoyed it, so would love to have you again. But I will
pleasure.
I will see you all at the Unmaster class in a couple of minutes. I hope that you all are there. I know Dariel has to be there, so I'll see him.
all right, see you in like 2 minutes.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.
So long.
Bye.